We have the distinct pleasure of Jerome Corsi now joining us. Jerry, welcome back to the Tammy Bruce radio program. It's been a while. It's a pleasure to speak with you, my dear.
Well, Tammy, it's an honor and pleasure to be back with you. Thank you.
You know, I've received, and this is a thing called a red alert by WorldNetDaily.com.
Yeah.
And you have a number of issues. There's so much going on. The world has literally and truly changed since you have been doing your work in these last 6 months and since we spoke with you last. Everything ranging from assaults on free speech to a whole host of other dynamics. Tell us what, for you, Jerome Corsi, in this new dawn of a new era, what is most on your mind since you've got back home and what you've been working on, sir?
Well, I've just been working on the Obama administration. This article I wrote about There Will Be Blood. You know, this new warning by Harvard Nobel economist Neil Ferguson, who says that the economic crisis and the steps that Obama is taking, are basically so misguided that now Ferguson is worried that there's going to be blood in the streets and riots because
Wow.
this economic crisis is, as he sees it, a prolonged one, and the deficit spending that we're doing is exactly the wrong way out of the crisis because the crisis was caused by debt in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and just so people know your background, I mean, we know of your work. You received a Ph.D. from Harvard University in political science in '72. Of course, you're the author of many books, including your bestseller, The Abomination and the Late Great USA. Now, this is not that finally we have, Jerome, a lot of former Barack Obama cheerleaders, including David Brooks and even Maureen Dowd, saying, what's going on here? That for some reason they must have been in a coma during the campaign because what he's doing doesn't surprise us. Other economists, certainly cable economists, the Wall Street Journal, City Journal now, people are realizing that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing or is deliberately trying to make things worse. What do you think think is going on here with him?
And also, Tammy, I spent 25 years working with banks around the world. I have all the securities licenses and insurance licenses. I created financial planning divisions for the banks. So I've been in finance for a long time. As I wrote in Abomination, Barack Obama is a far leftist. And when you read David Brooks in the New York Times says, well, he's surprised. He thought Barack Obama was going to govern from a moderate center position. Well, I mean, hello? I mean, David Brooks, whatever gave him that idea? As I proved in the Abomination, Obama's background was in Chicago as a community organizer working in a radical Saul Alinsky organization. Obama taught Alinsky's methods. Saul Alinsky is Rules for Radicals. That was his major book. In the 60s, his whole teaching was to grab power, say whatever you need to say to get elected, and then redistribute income in a socialist, virtually communist methodology.
You know, Jerome, your book, Abomination, while it was important during the campaign, it very well could be even more important now as people are willing maybe to hear the truth, because you do lay it out right there exactly what's happening right now.
Precisely, and I show going in Obama's entire background, even to when he was in high school, and Frank Marshall Davis, a Communist Party member, a black poet and journalist from Chicago, retired in Hawaii, was one of Obama's early mentors. Obama uses a pseudonym in his autobiography. He calls him just Frank. But I proved it was Frank Marshall Davis, and Obama admitted it. And, Obama writes that he and his grandfather would smoke marijuana, drink whiskey in high school, and talk communist ideology with Frank Marshall Davis. So this leftist, socialist orientation is consistent in what Obama self-reports in his autobiography and what I researched in the Abomination. And now, when we've got the $787 billion economic stimulus bill, it's really a massive social reorganization.
Now, tell me, when it comes to what we think and the warning when it comes to what you are referring to in your article, that there will be blood, is there, and I believe this to be the case, that obviously it's obvious the Obama policies will fail. We have an election coming up in 2010. Do you believe that conservatives can retake Congress and reverse the nature of what's happening here? Do you think that conservatives at the Republican Party, as that vessel, are going to get their act together fast enough to make a difference here?
I think I was just at CPAC, and there were almost 9,000 people at CPAC. A lot of young people. I was very encouraged to see that Barack Obama is probably going to be the energy needed to get the conservative movement going again. And what better opportunity, Tammy, because now we've got this massive deficit spending. I've been writing in WorldNet Daily, where I'm a staff journalist, that we're going to go and borrow $2.5 trillion. I went into the Treasury's minutes of the meeting of the group that actually does the borrowing, and $2.5 trillion of new Treasury debt, largely sold to China and Japan and the oil-producing countries. And then in 2010, $4 trillion of borrowing. It's not even clear that China is going to buy this much debt. It'll expand our national debt, which is now at $10 trillion, by 65% increase in 2 years.
And becoming even more beholden to one of the most evil, genocidal nations on Earth, which is China, which has just announced, Jerome, that they have turned over their space station plans to become a military outpost, and they're boosting their military by 15%. They're looking for a military space station, if you will, not a research space station, but a military-based space station by the end of next year. And what are the conservatives doing now? Fighting amongst themselves, as Barack Obama looks to talk radio as the enemy, as opposed to the depraved Chinese.
Well, and I think that this is an excellent opportunity for the Republican Party to focus on issues of fiscal responsibility and smaller government. The other issue I wrote about in the current Red Alert newsletter is not to be. Barack Obama says that he is not going to try to get the fairness doctrine put back in place, but yet he's going to backdoor it. This attack on Rush Limbaugh is being orchestrated out of the White House. It's an enemies list. And the plan is to go after this local control issue through the FCC, or Federal Communications Commission, basically trying to break up any of the radio powerhouses like Clear Channel or Citadel or Salem or Cumulus that own radio stations and can syndicate shows like yours, Tammy, and try to keep conservative radio off of the national broadcasting. So the assault from the Obama administration is not only on a fiscal irresponsibility. We're borrowing from China to increase social welfare payments to, America's impoverished. And look, I've got tremendous sympathy for the poor, but unfortunately we've shown since the Johnson administration, the Great Society, the only way we're going to solve poverty in this country is with families, education, and jobs. It is not.
Well, and I mentioned it, Jerome Corsi, this is the irony. The poor, what they rely on is, in fact, the entrepreneurial spirit and the successful becoming more successful so that more jobs will be created. The poor also rely on the conservative ideal of this country in order for them to get their lives back on track. It's a delusion to suggest that the opposite is true. It just condemns them further into poverty.
And what we're getting here is an attack on the Obama administration on the very spirit of free enterprise. I mean, if I'm watching all the reports coming in, I'm about to write about them in World Today and Red Alert. The attacking corporations because they're holding meetings. And, of course, it's okay for Barack Obama to take all of his Air Force One and all the limousines and everything to go to Chicago to take his wife for dinner. That's fine. But let one of these bailed-out companies have a convention at a resort, and Barack Obama's all on top of them with his socialist attitude.
Well, and specifically for our peeps, Jerome Corsi, listening on KDOX in Las Vegas right now, talking specifically about that city being under attack specifically by Barack Obama. I think there's a reason for that. It's because it is an economic engine for this country. Nevada is an independent state, and he wants to hurt them.
And the hotel industry, the entire ability to get the food and the hotel rooms, if that industry goes, that's another major blow to the economy. But yet this socialist mentality that somehow it's wrong to make money.
Yes.
Look, Tammy, I've got great compassion for the poor. The problem is we do these home bailouts, and 60% of the people who are bailed out are back in foreclosure in 6 months because they don't have jobs. So
right.
Thanks for the check and reducing my mortgage today. I'm glad to have that help. But what am I going to do in 6 months when I still don't have a job? And I'm so happy to hear you on the theme that the Republican Party can revitalize on conservative.
Yes.
Coming out of
you know what? Absolutely. And Jerome, here's what we need. I mean, conservatives tend to not like leadership because they're the dynamic of independence and individualism. But what we rely on is, and like your book, Late Great USA, it's not a hopeless scenario. That it's about information's important. People need to know what's going on, and your work exemplifies that and gives it to us. I'm at the end here, and I want to thank you, Jerome, again for joining us. It's great to have you home, and it's great to read your work. Thank you, dear. I appreciate